Okay. Welcome, everyone, wherever you are and whoever you are, to the Coin Bureau podcast. My name is Guy.
And my name is Mad Mike Mooch.
There he is. Nice to see you again, old chap.
Yeah.
Are you well?
Very well.
Good. That's a multiple switch off of listeners right there. I tuned in to listen about crypto and I got
Puns.
I got a terrible pun
The worst
within
puns
the opening 2 minutes. Unsubscribe.
Yeah.
How did you find last week's episode?
Yeah, great.
I thought it was fascinating, wasn't it? There's so much to talk about, especially so much that I find so interesting, especially about Bitcoin's early history.
There's definitely a movie going to be made about it.
Yeah.
With The Rock.
With The Rock.
Vin Diesel.
Is that what you've been looking into over the past week, sort of casting the movie?
I've just been DMing them and tweeting them.
Vin is interested.
Vin is interested. Yeah, Vin is very interested. The Rock, not so much.
It's something you can be talking about, these fascinating events that may have happened decades or hundreds of years ago or centuries ago or whatever.
It feels quite distant, unconnected.
Yeah. But when you talk about the history of Bitcoin, I can sort of cycle back through my memory and go, okay, so 2009. I remember
what I was doing roughly in that period.
Vaguely
and
where
cringing at what I was wearing.
Yeah.
FOMO is FOMO. You know,
FOMO is FOMO.
You could have invested in, Apple.
Yeah, that's true.
You could have,
Yeah, I could have been. I basically could have been sort of not completely profligate with the small amount of money that I was earning and actually.
Yeah, but would you be the person you are today?
No, and that would be good.
No. There's no point regretting anything unless it's a crime.
At the end of the last episode, Bitcoin had basically been released into the wild, if you remember. So at the end of the last episode, Bitcoin had just kind of been released into the wild, as it were. Yes, so at the end of the last episode, Bitcoin had just been released into the wild, if you like. And do you remember it hadn't been... It hadn't
turned off their computer.
Yeah, so Hal Finney, who was the second person after Satoshi to start running the Bitcoin software, he ran it for a while. But yeah, his computer was getting so hot that he was getting annoyed by the noise of the fan. So he turned it off. So we had that. So Bitcoin was released to, you can't even call it a lukewarm reception. It was barely a reception at all. Like a couple of people replied on the forum with, as we saw, sort of fairly valid points about potential weak spots in Bitcoin. So it wasn't particularly well received at all. It was fairly meh. It was a big meh, basically. And we also, didn't we? We looked at some of the predecessors to it, things like DigiCash, and then some of these other attempts to basically build a digital money. And this was obviously being done by these people that we met called the cypherpunks, these kind of uber geeks, if you like.
Cypherpunks.
Cypherpunk, yeah. Should we say it like that from now on?
Cypherpunks.
So yes, so the cypherpunks.
Mom!
These are very clever and probably quite powerful people.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
We should be nice about them.
Oh yeah, we should never mock the powerful.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we talked a bit about last time about Satoshi Nakamoto, the elusive creator of Bitcoin.
Not Nakatomi Tower. I got it right.
You got it right. Nakatomi Plaza.
Oh. Fuck. I didn't get it right.
You didn't get it right. Yeah, we talked about Satoshi a bit last time, and as I said, it's such a fascinating story. There's so much nuance, there's so many little channels and eddies to explore in that story that we're going to do a separate episode on that another time. So Hal was a really big player in the early days of Bitcoin. So let's just talk a little bit about him for a start. So he was born in California in 1956. Mm-hmm. He was obviously a really smart guy. He was a science fiction fan. He went to the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, I think they call it, Caltech. He took courses. Apparently, he was taking kind of graduate courses when he was in his first year. He's that sort of clever.
Yeah.
Sort of almost, cleverer than the professors sort of guy. And he graduated. He had a degree in engineering, but he was also a really kind of athletic guy. He loved skiing and running, Apparently, he was very outdoorsy. So he's not your typical computer geek.
What were your stereotyping the typical geek?
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, he basically he got out a lot.
Okay.
As well as spending a lot of time behind a computer.
Yeah.
He did. Yeah. He managed to. I think he had that sort of
Nice
work-life balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the early part of his career was spent designing video games, which is obviously. I mean, that has to be one of the coolest jobs, doesn't it?
No.
No. So that brings us to Bitcoin, if you like. So Hal had form in this regard. He'd worked on privacy issues, he'd worked on privacy tech, and he'd also sort of dipped a toe in the water of a private digital cash. So he was going to be naturally more receptive to Bitcoin as an idea. So, yeah, he saw its potential, and he became, shortly after beginning working on it with Satoshi, he became the first ever person to receive a Bitcoin transaction. Satoshi sent him one as a test, but to basically test the network. He sent him 10 BTC, which was worth precisely nothing then, and which would be worth at today's prices somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000. So. But we won't dwell on that. So Hal is really important to especially to the really early days of Bitcoin, because he firstly believed in it, and secondly gave up a lot of time and effort to help Satoshi with it and to help iron out these flaws and basically develop it. And I think it's fair to say that. If he hadn't done this work, if he hadn't committed that sort of time, then Bitcoin might just never have got off the ground. So he was really, really vital.
An OG player.
Yeah. And you might have picked up on the fact that I referred to Hal Finney in the past tense.
Oh yeah, he did.
He did. Yeah, he did. So he sadly died in 2014. So at this point, there were obviously still only a handful of other people working on the network. But one guy who heard about it was a student from Finland. Finland. And his name was Martti Malmi.
Martti
Malmi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And Martti, I think, is kind of one of Bitcoin's... Martti! Is one of Bitcoin's more unsung heroes, I think.
Okay.
He, again, contributed a heck of a lot, especially in the early days, and, with no sort of real thought of...
Are these unsung heroes multimillionaires now, though?
No.
No?
No. This is what's really interesting for me, because I think if they were... it wouldn't necessarily undo all the work that they'd done, but if they were, you'd sort of... They would have obviously have held on to their Bitcoin and... and been kind of unwilling to sort of put it out into the world. And I think what's amazing about what these guys did is that they were much more focused, on developing the technology. So it wasn't about trying to accumulate as much as they could in the hope that it might one day be worth something. And a lot of them, as we'll see, especially some of the later ones, were sort of really big about putting it out into the world, about giving people Bitcoin. Giving people BTC in order that they could give it a try for themselves.
Yeah, sort of a try before you buy sort of thing.
Yeah. And one of the guys,
take mine before you mine.
One of the guys we'll talk about in a bit. When you hear how he did it, it's crazy.
Okay.
So I think
Martti,
I think Martti deserves a lot of kudos. He was an amateur coder. He wasn't in anything like the same league as Hal or Satoshi, but he really clicked onto the ideas behind Bitcoin. This kind of libertarian ideal that it was money without borders, without centralized control, or peer to peer. He understood that right from the off. And also, I think perhaps most interestingly of all, Martti also collaborated with Satoshi to design the Bitcoin logo. And Martti has another big claim to fame. He was one of the people to receive one of the last ever emails from Satoshi. And this was May 2011, and this was an email saying, "I've moved on to other things and probably won't be around in the future." So that was...
Ghosted.
Yeah.
I've sent that email a few times. More in a text, though.
Satoshi was just ghosting. It's like, hey, we should do some more. That working on the logo was really fun.
Moved on to other things, babe.
I'm moving on. So, yeah, people like Hal and Martti selflessly contributed to Bitcoin in its early days. So on that note, shall we take a quick break and quick five, and then we'll come back and talk about a couple of other guys. Yeah, it is fascinating. TikTok. It's Chinese. You know that?
Yeah, I did.
Welcome back.
Welcome
to this, our second episode on Bitcoin.
Part 2.
So, we've just been talking about Hal Finney and Martti Malmi, these two guys who selflessly contributed time and effort and much else besides in order to make Bitcoin what it became, in order to help improve it, in order to help get the word out about it. And as I say, yeah, their contributions are, in some cases, a little unsung, I think, but absolutely vital, especially in those early days.
Yeah.
What's that you're drawing?
Just a Bitcoin logo.
Just a Bitcoin logo. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
It's not quite right.
No, it needs a bit of work. It's so
phallic.
Detailed. Okay, so two other people who've contributed a ton to Bitcoin in the past are, Laszlo and Gavin.
Laszlo, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. So we have met this guy, Laszlo Hanyecz, before. Now, he is a computer programmer who is based in Florida. And he's another one of these early guys who didn't hodl. Now, when I say we've talked about him before, we talked about him briefly.
Oh, the graphics card.
Exactly. Yeah, we talked about him in the episode.
This is the pizza guy.
This is Bitcoin Pizza Guy, yeah. Laszlo discovered that if he switched his computer's graphics card, his GPU, graphics processing unit, it was much better designed to do what Bitcoin mining is, which is essentially
rolling a dice.
Yeah, conducting the same very boring, very straightforward process over and over again, basically making lots of guesses at a very random number. So the GPU on the computer was much better suited to this, and Laszlo had this idea, and yeah, as you say, he kind of supercharged the Bitcoin mining process. This isn't Laszlo's only contribution to Bitcoin, because when he first came across it, he was another one who understood the process, understood what Bitcoin was about and saw the potential of it. So he approached it with a kind of, if you like, a kind of hacker's mentality. So he looked at it, looked at the software and tried to find things that were wrong with it. Now, fortunately for Bitcoin and for us, he had a sort of white hat hacker approach. Have you heard this term before?
Black hat and white hat. White hat is the legit way of doing it.
Yeah, so a white hat hacker basically does it for
good reasons.
Yeah, to try and find vulnerabilities in the code, to try and find weak points, and then I mean there are lots of people who make their living out there doing this. They'll hack a company's systems and then come to them and go, look, this is what I did. This is the problem with your security or whatever, and this is how you fix it. And yeah, so there's
the invoice.
Yeah. By the way, it'll cost you this much.
I generally do apologise.
But this is Bitcoin the movie. So,
he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt.
Oh my word!
Or he's wearing a funky shirt with some funky designs on it. But he's not. Are those the actual pizzas?
I don't think they're the actual pizzas, but apparently I think he went on to buy, I think once this pizza transaction was successful, he actually went on to buy several more because he had all these Bitcoin.
He's the Bitcoin trader, Laszlo, who spent cryptocurrency now worth £306 million on 2 pizzas, says I have no regrets.
Yeah. So he stipulated no weird fish toppings. And the person who obliged, so obviously Laszlo sent out this plea. The person who obliged was a student called Jeremy Sturdivant, who called up the Papa John's pizzeria near where Laszlo was based and ordered 2 pizzas for him, apparently worth around $40, to be sent to him on May the 22nd, 2010. And this is the first example that we know about of Bitcoins being used to pay for actual real-world stuff. Jeremy says...
Buy a submarine.
Why a submarine?
Because, that's what Bitcoin is for. You buy submarines.
I'm not aware of anyone having used Bitcoin to buy a submarine yet.
I mean, cartels do tend to use submarines. It's like...
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, Bitcoin... it's kind of like, if you're paying in dollars, which is flashy and everyone sees it,
Yeah.
Bitcoin slightly more reserved. It's traceable, but not quite so obvious.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a submarine.
Well, I mean, yeah, just a great little story about Bitcoin in its early days. No one had a clue it would go to this much, but these guys were just playing around with it. They were just trying to use it. They just believed in it. And
I suppose it's like playing a little game and you've got loads of, Sims money, and then you're spunking it on, some new Sims road trip or Sim pizza, and then that becomes, this is now the currency and is worth billions.
yeah. So let's talk about, there's one other person that I wanted to get to today who also played a key role in the development of Bitcoin, and this guy is called Gavin Andresen. He was, surprise, surprise, you won't believe this, he was a computer programmer. I know. Crazy, right?
Did he enjoy video games as well?
He was a base jumper who...
Oh, was he?
No. He discovered Bitcoin in May 2010 and, again, like some of the other guys we've talked about today, saw its potential straight away. He also began corresponding with Satoshi and contributing to the development of the protocol because, obviously, he had the programming skills necessary. And he was the third person after Satoshi and Martti to update Bitcoin's core code. So that's another great claim to fame. Gavin Andresen set up a website called the Bitcoin Faucet. Faucet as in tap.
Yeah.
It's a weird word, isn't it? Yeah. For years I didn't know what that was. It's like, what are they talking about when they talk about the faucet? Anyway, you're looking at me as though I'm a complete idiot. Fair enough.
No, this is the look I get all day.
How does it
From
feel?
many people.
So Gavin set up a website called the Bitcoin Faucet, and basically you clicked on a captcha
And he
to show that you weren't a robot.
And he'd give you Bitcoin.
Yeah, you got 5 BTC. Take a moment. He spent $50 to get 10,000 BTC, and he gave them all away through this Bitcoin Faucet, which is just incredible.
What's the website?
Funnily enough.
Hey, look, I'm just checking.
Here's a forum post that he wrote about the faucet. I want the Bitcoin project to succeed, and I think it's more likely to be a success if people can get a handful of coins to try it out. Putting his money where his mouth was. And what's interesting, particularly about Gavin, and this will be more relevant perhaps when we talk about Bitcoin in future episodes, is that he didn't approach it from any sort of political angle. Because a lot of the people that we've seen, a lot of the people that we've talked about,
freedom.
they held very strong political views on it. And this is going to become more and more of a thing as we delve further into Bitcoin and crypto. It's inextricably bound up with politics. And he was also happy to become a sort of face for the project. So when he went on the forum, he used his real name and his actual picture, which again I think is important because he became a sort
validity to it.
Yeah, he became, and it showed that it was more than just a sort of dark currency for the dark web or something like that. That here was someone who was entirely respectable, obviously very intelligent and passionate, but entirely respectable as well, who was willing to say, this is me, this is what I believe in, this is my face, this is my name. Gavin unfortunately hitched himself to a project called Bitcoin Cash, which was a rival fork of Bitcoin. Now this all came about as a result. Yeah. And Bitcoin Cash is still going. It's still
not worth as much as it was. No,
it's struggling a bit. But we'll see this when we come to the block size wars. This was the offshoot of the block size wars, which was a pretty rough time in Bitcoin's history. But that's a few years in the future from where we are now. Yeah, it's a huge contribution that these 4 people. So we've got Hal, we've got Martti, we've got Laszlo, and we've got Gavin. These guys who have all contributed to the project. I want to quickly just put some of these events in order. And this will help us get a little bit of historical context because it can be quite difficult to keep track of all these events as they happen. Yeah, when exactly it happened. So we start in August 2008. Satoshi emails Adam back asking for his opinion on Bitcoin. This is the first time that anyone other than Satoshi has ever heard of Bitcoin. Then on the 31st of October 2008, the Bitcoin white paper appears. And then, as we said, deafening silence, almost nothing. Fast forward to the 3rd of January 2009, the Genesis block is mined. The first ever Bitcoin block is mined. And do you remember, we talked about it in the last episode, it contained that message, the Times... the Times
second
newspaper.
bailout for some bank or something.
For banks, yeah. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. Basically this message that puts it in context of the financial crash that we'd seen the year before. 8th of January 2009, a few days later, the first version of the Bitcoin software is released. And then on the 12th of January 2009, we have that first ever Bitcoin transaction when Satoshi sends 10 Bitcoin, 10 BTC to Hal. Yeah, to Hal Finney. Then May 2009 is when Martti first gets in touch with Satoshi. August 2009, the Bitcoin Forum is set up, the first ever Bitcoin Forum. Then on the 12th of October 2009, Martti receives the first ever BTC to US dollar transaction. And that was, just over 5,000 Bitcoins for $5.02.
Wow. Still better than giving it away.
Still better than giving it away, yeah. And this was from New Liberty Standard. That was the person's handle on the Bitcoin Forum. We're going to hear from New Liberty Standard again in the next episode.
That sounds like a libertarian.
Quite possibly. May 2010, Gavin Andresen discovers Bitcoin. May the 22nd, 2010, Bitcoin Pizza Day. Then 11th of June 2010, Gavin launches the Bitcoin Faucet and starts giving it all away. Then we have this really important day in July, the 11th of July 2010. This is when this Slashdot article is published, and this is a real sort of rocket fuel for Bitcoin. It's certainly in tech circles. Then I just want to mark this date now, and we'll talk about it at length in the next episode. 18th of July 2010, the Mt. Gox exchange is launched. Yeah, they made really significant contributions in different ways, and I think they deserve maybe not equal credit with Satoshi, but they certainly deserve.
They deserve a chapter. In the book of Bitcoin.
In the book of Bitcoin, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's very much thanks to them that Bitcoin made it. It survived and it began to thrive. And so next time, as I say, we will look at Bitcoin getting out into the world. We'll take a look at Mt. Gox and the Silk Road, and things get crazy.
Stuff.
Yeah, we're going to meet some more personalities in the next one, and I think it's safe to say that they are a lot different from the guys.
Cyberpunk. They're a different guy from the Cyberpunk.
Yeah, they're not exactly cyberpunk. They're kind of there's some absolutely fascinating characters coming up in this next episode. So stay tuned.
Sounds good.
All right. See you then. Thank you so much for listening to the Coin Bureau podcast. If you'd like to learn more about cryptocurrency, you can visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Coin Bureau. You can also go to coinbureau.com for loads more information about all things crypto. You can follow me on Twitter at @Coin Bureau, all one word, and I'm also active on TikTok and Instagram as well.